You remember that moment, don't you? That quiet second when you stopped trying to explain yourself. When you looked around and realized every shoulder you once leaned on was now too busy carrying their own lies. That's the first time you walked alone. Not because you wanted to, but because you had to. Because when the mask slipped off and they saw the storm behind your smile, they ran. Ain't that something? They praised you when you were silent, obedient, easy to swallow. But the second you showed them your bite, they spit you out like poison. And that's the twisted beauty of it. Walking alone, it ain't a tragedy. It's a goddamn transformation. Because silence don't just speak. It screams the truth. You think you lost something when you distanced yourself. Nah. You just found out who was never with you in the first place. And that hurts, I know. It rips through the heart, like glass through skin. But pain, my friend, pain is the price of becoming real. Becoming raw. Becoming something this world doesn't know how to love until it's too late. You were their light. You cared too much. You gave too much. And they drained it all until there was nothing left to take. Then they called you cold, called you changed. Funny, right? They create the void, then blame you for falling into it. But here's the trick. That void, it teaches you to move in silence, to observe without reacting, to carry your scars like weapons. They thought you were weak, 'cause you felt. Nah. The weak ones are the people who run from emotion, who can't handle truth without sugar. But you stayed. You endured. You bled and still smiled. That ain't weakness. That's survival dressed like madness. That's strength people fear because they can't understand it. And they'll label you. They'll say you're too much, too quiet, too intense. What they really mean is you're not easy to use anymore. You stopped dancing for their approval. You stopped begging to be seen. You started moving like a ghost through the ruins they left behind. And that's when everything changed. You ain't crazy for feeling everything too deep. You're not wrong for shutting doors that led nowhere. You just woke up, finally. See, when you walk alone, your demons don't whisper anymore. They start talking. Loud, clear, real. And that's when you meet the part of yourself that no one clapped for. The part that held your world together in silence. No applause, no thank you, just grit. That version of you, that's the one they'll regret losing when it's too late. 'Cause once you learn to walk without hands to hold, without voices to guide you, you become the storm, not the victim of it. They'll come back, of course, one by one, with fake apologies stitched together by guilt and nostalgia. But you'll see right through them this time. 'Cause silence taught you to read more than just words. It taught you to read energy, actions, patterns. You're not bitter. You're not broken. You're just done playing small to fit in the frames of people too blind to see your worth. And now you move like a shadow, calm, quiet, calculated. You don't chase anymore. You attract, you build, you destroy, but only what no longer serves you. And the power in that, it scares them. 'Cause they remember the old you, the one who begged, cried, waited. And now, you're the version they said you'd never become. The one who knows better. The one who doesn't flinch when the world tries to test him. The one who laughs without needing company. The one who finally learned that walking alone isn't loneliness. It's evolution. They say the worst part of betrayal is that it never comes from enemies. Cute little quote, right? But you felt it. Not read it, felt it. In the way your chest burned while forcing a smile. In the way you kept showing up for people who wouldn't cross the street for you. In the way they used your silence against you. Painted your loyalty as desperation. Your love as weakness. You gave them everything, the truth, the time, the effort, and they treated it like a discount offer. You were never hard to love. They were just too empty to understand the kind of heart that doesn't quit on people. You weren't looking for worship. You just wanted someone real. Someone who didn't fold when things got messy. But nah, they dipped when the storm rolled in. Left you drowning while they stood dry on the shore, telling the world you were too emotional, too much. And that's what broke you, right? Not the leaving, the way they left. Cold, quiet, no closure. Like you never mattered. Like you were just a chapter in a book they were too lazy to finish reading. And then came the silence. That thick, suffocating silence. Where the phone didn't ring, the door didn't knock, and your thoughts were the only voices that stayed. That's when you cracked. Not the loud kind of breaking, the silent kind, the kind that happens in the dark when no one's watching, when the only witness is the ceiling you've stared at for too many nights. You questioned everything. Was I the problem? Did I expect too much? Was I not enough? But nah, that was never the case. They just weren't built for someone who gives without keeping score. You're not crazy for wanting consistency, for craving depth, for needing more than surface level. I'm here for yous that disappear the moment you need them. You were just born into a world that romanticizes toxicity and calls it passion, that glorifies distance and calls it mystery, that praises selfishness and calls it self-love. So, yeah, you were the problem for people who didn't know what real looks like. But here's where the game flips. That silence you hated, it made you. It taught you how to breathe without validation, how to survive without being seen, how to become the type of person that don't need noise to feel powerful. The truth? You were always strong, but strength gets quiet when it's tired. And you were exhausted, carrying people, stories, burdens that never belonged to you. You didn't walk alone because you wanted to be a savage. You walked alone because you realized no one was walking with you. They were riding your back. They loved the light you gave until they saw it start burning them. Then they called you toxic. Ain't that a punchline? You heal people, hold them, hype them, and they label you a threat when you finally put that same energy into healing yourself. But it's cool. Let them talk. Let them spin their little narratives. Meanwhile, you're becoming unrecognizable, evolving in shadows, plotting in silence. That's what the walk alone does. It makes monsters out of angels. Not evil, awake. And now, look at you, still standing. Scarred, yeah, but smarter. Hardened, but not heartless. You feel less now, but see more. You don't rush to speak. You let actions scream. You don't beg to be chosen. You choose yourself. And that's what changes everything. 'Cause once you walk alone, you stop depending. You stop expecting. You stop bleeding for people who wouldn't even hand you a damn bandage. And trust me, that version of you, the one rising from rock bottom with no hands, reaching down, that version's lethal, untouchable, dangerous. Not because you've become cold, but because you've become clear. You see people now, their intentions, their masks, their games. And instead of playing dumb like before, you smile, nod, and walk the other way. Not bitter, just done. You know what's funny? The ones who told you they'd never leave, they were the first to vanish when things got too real. They loved the idea of you, the version that made them feel important, feel seen. But the moment your truth started burning through their comfort zones, they backed off like cowards. They weren't ready for the real you, the raw you, the one that doesn't sugarcoat pain or fake smiles just to make others feel secure. They were addicted to your energy, but allergic to your depth. They wanted you calm when you were hurting, quiet when you were breaking, and forgiving when they were reckless. And when you finally said, enough, when you stopped giving your peace away like spare change, they labeled you the villain. That's the irony. You become the problem the moment you stop being used. But let me ask you, would you rather be hated for choosing yourself or loved for living like a doormat? Exactly. That's why walking alone, it ain't lonely. It's a reset, a brutal rebirth. One where you bury who they wanted you to be and resurrect who you were always meant to become. And let's not pretend it didn't kill you inside at first. You wanted them to fight for you, to show up, to prove you mattered. But silence became their answer, and absence became their weapon. So you stopped reaching. You stopped hoping. And damn, that silence started making sense after a while. You realize the people who love you don't always show it when it counts. They love you when it's easy, when it benefits them, when you're smiling. But when you're on your knees, choking on heartbreak, and they scroll past your pain like it's just another story, that's when the truth hits. They never saw you. Not really. They saw what you did for them. They saw your presence as convenience, your love as a transaction. But once you walked away, once you stopped replying, stopped explaining, stopped bleeding for their comfort, suddenly you became distant, different, hard to deal with. But no, you just stopped settling. You woke up, and that's what terrifies them. Not your silence, your clarity. You see it now, don't you? The patterns, the games, the manipulation wrapped in sweet words and fake concern. You started studying people instead of trusting them. You stopped falling for, "I miss you," and started watching how they show up. Words don't mean shot tea without consistency. And love? Love without respect is just manipulation with pretty packaging. You learned that the hard way, but you learned. And now you don't panic when people leave. You don't chase, you observe, you analyze. And if they can't match your energy, your standards, your peace, you walk, not out of arrogance, out of growth. See, walking alone taught you the difference between company and weight, between presence and pressure, between love and attachment. And you're done carrying what doesn't carry you back. You've become your own rescue mission, your own peace, your own fecking army. And still, they'll whisper. They'll watch from a distance, trying to figure out how you survived without them. They'll say, "He changed. She's cold now. He thinks he's better." But what they won't say, that they failed you, that they abandoned you, that they underestimated you. Because accountability, that's poison to people who live in denial. So let them lie. Let them paint their little stories. Meanwhile, you build in silence. You grow in darkness. And when they least expect it, you rise. Not for revenge, not to prove anything, but because survival wasn't enough for you. You didn't just want to breathe, you wanted to breathe fire. You didn't just want peace, you wanted to become it. And now that you've walked through the storm, alone, barefoot, broken, you know your worth. You don't just feel it, you embody it. And there's no going back, no more shrinking, no more dimming your light so others can shine. From now on, it's elevation or isolation. No in between, no compromises. Just cold, calculated clarity. Let me break something down for you, real clear. Pain is your blueprint now. All that hurt you bottled up, all the nights you collapsed silently, the mornings you wore a fake grin to survive. Yeah, that's your fire. That's your weapon. That's the reason you're dangerous now. Because unlike them, you didn't run from pain. You shook hands with it. You sat in it, drowned in it. You bled through the silence and came out screaming inside. And no one noticed. No one cared. And that, my friend, is the cruelest education you'll ever get. But it's also the most powerful. Because once you've been abandoned, betrayed, lied to, and erased, once you've been broken so deep you forgot what peace even felt like, you stop fearing loss. You stop clinging. You stop needing. And that's what flips the game. Because the man who has nothing left to lose, he's the one you never want to see rise. He's the one who doesn't fight for validation. He fights to evolve. And evolution, that's messy, that's silent, that's built in the shadows while the world's too busy gossiping to see what's coming. You remember when you begged them to stay? When you tried explaining yourself, like your heart was some courtroom and they were the damn judge? You gave them evidence, truth, vulnerability, and they still turned their backs. They chose peace over truth, ego over connection. But what they didn't know, what they never realized, is that their exit was your entry. The day they left was the day the old you died. The soft one, the forgiving one, the one who always made excuses for other people's damage while neglecting your own. That version of you, gone, buried. And in its place stands something else, someone else, someone unrecognizable to the ones who used to know you. And now that they can't control you, define you, or guilt trip you, they fear you, because your silence is not absence, it's focus. Your distance isn't bitterness, it's clarity. Your coldness isn't evil, it's healing. You ain't perfect, you never claimed to be, but you're real. And that's why they couldn't handle you. You call things out. You hold people accountable. You speak truth without a filter. And in a world full of liars and cowards, that makes you a threat. You didn't lose them. They lost someone who would have gone to war for them. They lost someone rare. But they were too distracted by noise to see the value of silence. Too used to chaos to recognize peace when it stood in front of them. And now they sit in rooms filled with noise and feel emptier than ever. 'Cause fake company doesn't replace real connection. They'll scroll through fake smiles and plastic loyalty, trying to replicate what you gave so freely. But it won't work. 'Cause people like you don't come twice. They never do. And you? You've stopped explaining. You've stopped proving. You've stopped fixing things that break you in the process. You walk away now. Not in anger, but in awareness. You know what you bring. You know what you're worth. And you're done settling for almost, sometimes, maybe. You want loyalty, not convenience. Truth, not performance. Presence, not promises. And that scares people, because most of them can't offer that. They don't have the discipline, the depth, the soul. And you? You've got all three. That's why you walk alone now. Not because you're unlovable, but because you refuse to be misunderstood again. You refuse to teach people how to love you while they drain you in the process. And if that means walking solo, so be it. You'd rather be alone with your truth than surrounded by people who only clap when you're useful. So remember this, next time you feel like breaking again, don't. Rebuild, sharpen, rise. 'Cause every scar you carry, that's proof you survived shit that would have buried most. and that walk you took alone, that wasn't the end. That was the beginning. That was the moment you woke up. People think silence is weakness. That just shows how little they understand about power. Real power doesn't scream. It doesn't beg to be seen. It waits. It watches. It plans. And when it moves, it ends everything in its path. That's you now. You became that silence, that calm before the storm, the kind of presence that don't need to raise its voice to be felt, the kind of soul that doesn't chase anymore because it knows what it brings to the table. You've become what they never saw coming, a quiet reckoning, the version of you that doesn't explain, doesn't beg, doesn't try to save what doesn't want to be saved. Because let's be real. How many times did you give second chances to people who would have let you die in a room full of options? How many times did you bend till you nearly broke just to keep peace with people who wouldn't even meet you halfway? You watered dead plants. You gave light to people who preferred the dark. And in return, they blamed you for their own shadows. But you took it. You carried it. You let the guilt eat at you because you thought maybe, just maybe, if you heard enough, they'd finally appreciate your worth. But they didn't. And they never will. Because the truth is, they liked you better when you were broken, when you questioned your own value, when you were easy to manipulate, to guilt, to twist. They called you kind, loyal, humble, only because you didn't see your own power. But the second you started waking up, the second you started drawing lines and saying, "This ain't enough," they flipped. "You've changed," they said. Of course you did. Growth always looks like betrayal to people who stay stagnant. You evolved. You stepped out of their narrative. You stopped playing the fool in stories they wrote to make themselves look like the victim. And they couldn't stand it. 'Cause your healing meant they had to finally face their own mess. And people like that, they don't want healing. They want control. They want you soft, silent, shrinking. But you walked, alone. And in that walk, you found something they'll never understand. Peace that don't require permission. You're not the same. And that's a good thing. You no longer flinch at abandonment. You don't fear being misunderstood. You're done explaining your silence to people who never cared to understand your voice. You're focused now, surgical with your energy, cold, not cruel, just clear. And that's what scares them the most. That you're no longer broken, but built. Built from everything they tried to destroy in you. Every "you're not enough," every ghosted message. Every moment you sat wondering why you were never chosen. You took all of that and made a throne. Not out of revenge, but out of truth. Out of raw, unfiltered, ugly truth. And now you wear that truth like armor. You don't chase closure. You don't chase love. You don't chase people. You attract what aligns and you walk away from what drains. Let them talk. Let them misunderstand. Let them tell their side. Meanwhile, you're building. You're becoming. You're breaking every version of yourself that was designed to please the ungrateful. You walk different now. Eyes sharper, back straighter, heart quieter. You no longer bleed in front of people who'd watch you die just to avoid wiping the blood off their shoes. You no longer sit at tables where respect is a negotiation. You no longer stay where your soul feels like a guest. And the price of that? Yeah, it's solitude. But that's the tax for peace. That's the toll for self-respect. And you paid it. Alone, with no applause, no validation, no helping hand. And still, you rose. Not as the old you, patched and hoping, but as someone new, someone dangerous, someone untouchable. And now the world's watching, waiting, wondering how the hell you did it, and you won't say a word, because they already missed their chance to hear your voice. You know what most people never understand? That the loneliest part of your journey ain't when everyone leaves. It's when you finally stop waiting for them to come back. That's the real death. The death of hope. The death of the version of you who used to believe people would do right by you just because you did right by them. That version? He's gone now. Burned by betrayal. Choked by silence, replaced by something colder, sharper, smarter. And they'll say, you became heartless. But you didn't. You just stopped pouring into cups with holes. You stopped fighting for seats at tables where you were only invited to be mocked, used, or silenced. You stopped loving people with the kind of depth they never even earned. And now, they sit with their new distractions, pretending they're fine, while your absence carves holes in their chest they'll never admit are there. You didn't change. You returned to yourself. You stopped betraying your own soul just to keep fake ones around. And if that makes you the villain in their story, so be it. Better a villain in their lie than a prisoner in their chaos. You see, there's a moment, a dark, bitter moment, when you finally accept that closure isn't coming, that the apology you deserve ain't on its way, that the people who wronged you will walk around smiling like they did nothing while you carry the wounds like medals no one can see. And that's when you stop asking why. That's when the rage inside starts whispering, build, rise, detach. Not for revenge, not for the drama, but because your peace is worth more than their guilt. Because your growth is not a gift you owe to the ones who broke you. It's a weapon you sharpen in silence. And trust me, they'll notice. They always do. The minute you stop talking, the minute you stop chasing, the minute you stop bleeding out for people who never even noticed the cuts, they feel it. They feel your distance like a drought, but they'll never say it out loud. Nah, they'll pretend. They'll post. They'll act. But deep down, they know. They lost something real, something rare. Something irreplaceable. And you finally understood. Not everyone deserves access to your energy. Let them think you're cold. Let them say you switched up. They don't know the war you had to fight just to smile again. The nights you screamed into the dark with no one listening. The mornings you forced your feet out of bed when your mind was telling you to give up. They don't know how you stitched yourself back together, using hands that once begged for help. So no, you ain't cold. You're scarred. You're awake. And you've learned. You've learned that love without action is just a performance. That loyalty without presence is just noise. That saying, I'm here for you, don't mean a damn thing if they vanish the moment you break. And now you carry that knowledge like a sword. Every fake friend, every silent lover, every backstab dressed as a hug, it sharpened you, molded you, taught you. And now you move like someone who's been burned too many times to ever get close to the fire again. Not because you're afraid, but because you know how quickly warmth turns to ash when it comes from the wrong hands. So what's next? You keep walking, even when it hurts, even when your chest feels hollow and the world feels too loud. You keep walking, not because you know where you're going, but because you refuse to go back. Back to begging, back to bending, back to betraying yourself for people who couldn't even carry your name with honor. You keep building, quietly, carefully, with a mind sharper than their judgment and a soul deeper than their apologies. You build something they can't touch, something they can't destroy. You, not the broken version, not the old version, but the one who came out of the fire, untouched, unbothered, and unrecognizable. That's what scares them now, that they no longer know how to reach you, that the access they abused is now locked behind silence, growth, and boundaries they can't manipulate. And you don't even hate them anymore. You just see them clearly. And that, right there, is the most dangerous kind of power. You ever notice how they only come back when you've moved on? When you've rebuilt? When the damage they caused no longer defines your days? That's when the texts start again. That's when the fake check-ins slide in like they never vanished. But it's not love. It's not guilt. It's control. See, they don't miss you. They miss the access, the comfort, the attention. They miss the version of you that didn't know your worth. The version that picked up on the first ring, that responded to dry energy with full paragraphs, that gave everything in return for nothing. But now you've grown. Now you don't flinch when they disappear, and that scares the hell out of them. You ain't their emotional crutch anymore. You're not the fool waiting for breadcrumbs. You're the one who found peace in isolation, who learned to make silence a sanctuary instead of a prison. They can't handle that. Can't handle the fact that they don't live in your mind rent-free anymore. That their name don't sting. That their presence doesn't control your emotions. You healed from them. And to people like that, your healing is disrespect. And you ain't about to explain that healing either. Not anymore. You don't owe nobody a step-by-step manual on how you got up off that floor alone. You don't need to break down every tear, every sleepless night, every lie you forgave just to survive. That story belongs to you now, locked behind eyes that no longer soften when the wrong people speak. You speak less now, not because you got nothing to say, but because you've realized most people listen to respond, not to understand. And the truth? They don't want to hear your pain. They want to hear their name painted in a good light. They want you to stay quiet so they can continue telling their side uninterrupted. But you don't care anymore. Your peace is louder than their lies. Your growth outshines their guilt. And that's what burns them. That's what haunts them when the fake laughs fade and the nights get quiet. They lost someone they thought they could replace. Someone they thought would always be there. And now you're untouchable. It's funny, really. They thought breaking you would keep you weak, that disappearing on you would leave you stuck. But nah, it made you relentless. You stopped romanticizing potential. You started seeing people for who they were, not who you wanted them to be. You realized effort speaks louder than words, and presence weighs more than promises. You stopped giving chances to people who treated your heart like an option. You stopped waiting for people to choose you, because you've already chosen yourself. And from that moment forward, your energy became expensive. Not everybody gets access. Not everybody gets the soft version. Now you test people in silence. Now you measure actions, not intentions. You learned the hard way that love without loyalty is just manipulation. That I miss you means nothing without I'm here. And now you're not afraid to walk away mid-conversation, mid-relationship, mid-sentence. Because the second it costs your peace, it's too damn expensive. Let them say you're heartless. Let them call you distant. You didn't get here by accident. You were built in the fire, forged in abandonment, sharpened by silence. Every night you stayed up wondering what you did wrong was actually a night you were rewiring your mind to finally see your worth. They didn't see it, but that's on them. 'Cause people who can't love you properly will always try to convince you that your standards are the problem, that your boundaries are walls, that your clarity is cruelty. But deep down, they know what they lost. They know they fumbled someone who would have gone to hell and back just to make them feel whole. And now that you're whole on your own, they're sick with it. Choking on regret they'll never admit to. Drowning in memories they pretend not to miss. And you just keep walking. Calm, cold, focused. Because your future ain't built on explanations, it's built on elevation And the higher you go, the quieter it gets. But that silence, that's where legends are made. Let me tell you what really broke you. It wasn't the silence. It wasn't the betrayal. It wasn't even the lies. It was realizing that you gave everything to people who wouldn't even bleed a drop for you. That you kept showing up for people who vanished the second it was your turn to fall. That you were the strong one in everyone's story, except your own. That you were the fixer, the shoulder, the glue. And when you cracked, they looked away, like your pain was too inconvenient, like your sadness ruined the illusion they built around you. That's what shattered you. Not the loneliness, but the memory of how full your hands were when everyone's were empty. And when you finally had nothing left to give, they called you selfish. You've changed, they said, as if you weren't the one who held it down for everyone while no one showed up for you. And that's when you learned. People love to take, but they hate when the well runs dry. They don't want your soul. They want your use. And when you're no longer useful, they rewrite the narrative and call you difficult, ungrateful, cold. That's the price of waking up. So what now? You rebuild. Not just the outside, but the inside. You unlearn all the toxic habits that told you love had to hurt, that you had to overgive just to be accepted, that loyalty meant tolerating disrespect. You start demanding what you deserve, not what you're handed. You stop lowering your standards to meet people where they're comfortable. You start choosing yourself the way you used to choose everyone else. And yeah, it feels empty at first. That phone don't buzz like it used to. That room feels colder. But that's not loneliness. That's space. Space to grow, space to heal, space to finally hear your own thoughts without their noise polluting your mind. And in that space, that's where the magic happens. That's where the hunger kicks in, where the pain turns to power, where the silence sharpens into strategy. And when you finally rise, they won't even recognize you. 'Cause the person they abandoned was just the blueprint. What you've become now, that's the final product. That's what happens when survival meets clarity. You don't need revenge. You don't need to prove a thing. Just keep building. Keep walking. Keep becoming so untouchable that their absence becomes laughable. And they'll see it. Oh, they'll see it. In the way you move now. In the way you speak less and observe more. In the way your peace radiates while they still chase validation in broken places. They'll feel it in your absence, in the silence where your energy used to be, in the chaos they created for themselves, hoping you'd return to fix it. But not this time. You're not the same. You don't rescue people who throw you into flames anymore. You don't beg people to stay while they pack their bags. You don't send paragraphs to people who reply with indifference. Now you're the one who leaves, the one who cuts off with no warning, the one who walks away and never looks back. Not because you don't feel, but because you finally understand. Understand what? That not everyone is meant to go where you're headed. That peace sometimes means walking alone. That growth feels like grief when you have to leave behind people you once prayed would stay forever. That strength isn't always loud. It's the quiet decision to stop betraying yourself for temporary comfort. That not every connection deserves a second chance. Some people ain't meant to be corrected. They're meant to be cut. And you finally picked up the scissors. You finally started editing your life like your future depends on it. Because it does. You don't have time to shrink for people who never saw your greatness. You don't have energy to waste convincing anyone of your value. You've done enough. You've been enough. And now it's your turn to take all that love, all that loyalty, all that fire, and give it to the one person who deserved it all along, you.